Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my full review, the digitally digested segment, for the Sony 20mm f1.8 G-series lens. This latest addition to Sony's lineup of full-frame native E-mount glass is arguably one of the best wide-angle primes available today, because at $900 US, you are essentially getting nearly the same performance you'd get from the $1,400 24mm G Master f1.4, but of course at a lower price, as well as a lighter form factor, yet nearly the same build quality, and at least for my own purposes, the benefit of getting a wider angle. Now with that said, there is no optical steady shot on board, so if you plan on shooting both still and video content, it will serve you to have a body like this that has in-body stabilization. This is the A7R4, and the reason I've assembled this kit here to share with all of you is because I have found that the combination of having Sony's digital shotgun microphone as well as their Bluetooth wireless grip really has delivered a vlogging dream, as well as just an overall run and gun dream, since I'm not Mr. Vlog to begin with. But for those of you that are, whether it's for YouTube or any other purpose, this is a pairing that will not disappoint. So I wanted to share it with all of you as part of this review, because I feel that it would be incomplete if not mentioned when discussing the 20mm prime that I'm reviewing. Now, with that out of the way, as you may have already noticed, build quality and design overall is nearly identical to the 24mm G Master. This lens is not as sharp as the G Master, but I would argue it's close enough that the 24mm G Master shouldn't be forgotten, but unless you absolutely must have its properties and focal range, you know, why else consider anything other than this lens? It's less expensive and nearly as good a performer, and again, lighter, and I do prefer the wider angle. With that out of the way, I want to point out that it does have an aperture click switch right here, which you may already know about, you may not. That's why I'm pointing it out, and that is a benefit for those of you looking to shoot both still as well as video, because inherently, of course, you have the ability to turn it off for video use so that you can adjust your aperture accordingly without making any noise. And on the other hand, if you're shooting stills, well, it's self-explanatory, right? Now you have the click, so if you know where you start, you don't need to look at all, which is great. This isn't the first Sony lens to have it, but I'm glad to see it here in this $900 wide-angle prime. So what else makes this a fantastic lens? Well, besides the fact that it's incredibly sharp and does very well in low light, maybe not as well as the G Master, it's that it compares incredibly favorably to pretty much all wide-angle options for the full-frame E-mount platform. So what does that mean? If you're looking to shoot landscapes, if you're looking to shoot architectural shots, and dare I say, even if you're trying to shoot portraits, this lens is going to do a fantastic job. And if paired with a body like this, again, the A7R4 with all of its resolution, you can easily crop, aka zoom in this case, with this handle just by using the rocker right here. And yes, some fidelity is lost, but this is such a sharp lens that I have found my ability to so-called zoom with this is not compromised. Of course, only to a certain degree, but still important to mention. Now, I have been sick for several weeks, self-quarantine, so I haven't been able to get out and shoot with this outdoors as much as I would have liked, but that has not prevented me from shooting indoors and on my property, with my pets, with my family, all of that good stuff. And again, I have been impressed time and time again with the performance of this lens. Now, for those of you wondering why I've got two other lenses to the left and right of this piece of glass, I'm going to explain right now. And that is because I figured many of you out there, if this is your first lens that you're planning on purchasing, you're probably looking at other wide-angle options. And I felt like, well, the two I have in studio at present would be good to bring into the discussion. So I've got the Sony Zeiss 16-35 f4. It's been around for a long time. And then we have the G Master version of it, basically, because that's exactly what it is, the 16-35 f2.8. Now, the G Master is very expensive, over $2,000 unless you go the used route. And the f4 16-35, the so-called Sony If you don't know why, it's because it's a Sony Zeiss. And anyway, this, you could probably find this used for even under $1,000 or roughly $1,000 US. If you go retail, of course, it will be more. But the reason I wanted to bring these into place, yes, both of these are not prime lenses. They are wide-angle zooms. But the purpose of this is that when I got the G Master to review, I was convinced I would have to have it. And that's because this Sony 16-35 f4 has been one of my favorite lenses since its inception. In fact, when it was destroyed, along with my house, by Hurricane Matthew, I instantly repurchased it as soon as I had the available funds. And there's a reason. It was basically a permanent fixture on whatever interchangeable Sony full-frame camera I was using at any given time. So I was absolutely convinced the G Master would take its place. Well, some news. In using it, the G Master has been amazing, and it's been on the market for several years, so I'm certainly not the first nor the last, but especially not the first to tell all of you it's a fantastic performer. The surprise here is that the 20mm f1.8G lens actually stole the show. It did so because, well, the G Master is pretty heavy. Okay, it's f2.8, and after all, you know, thinking about the price and the overall performance, I kept coming back to the 20mm f1.8 because at that $900 price point, for all intents and purposes, all of you out there, I can't really say to you that you'd be better served by getting this lens. Now, I, again, know it's not prime, okay? I know it's a G Master. It's not as fast as the f1.8 on the 20mm prime. That's a given. It's a prime lens. This is a zoom. But the fact of the matter here is that if you're purchasing a lens to be your main go-to for the photography purposes I've mentioned earlier, such as landscape and architectural shots, and then if you want to do portraits, this thing will still excel, and it has a very, besides being incredibly sharp, it does a very good job at its minimum focus distance as well, something that you wouldn't necessarily expect, giving you all kinds of capability on basically anything you'd like to explore, while still preserving the overall effect of having that 20mm focal range. Well, what do you have left in your pocket? You've spent $900 on this piece of glass, but you desire something a little bit wider. You desire something that's going to give you a little bit more range in terms of telephoto, even though it's not true telephoto. Well, you still have plenty of budget to pick up this lens. And even though this lens, again, the Sony Zeiss 16-35 f4, isn't brand new, isn't the best of its kind in the marketplace, the cost of these two lenses combined is basically the same as this single G Master. And while everything isn't about cost, in this case, I would argue it pretty much is. And that's because the performance of the 20mm G lens is better than either of these at 20mm. And then if you were really trying to add, again, that 16-35 range, something a little wider, something a little bit longer, you would be better served with this combination than having the G Master alone. So that is the entire purpose of me having both of these lenses out there. It's part of my own personal experience, my own personal preference. If I were to make a purchase tomorrow, I thought I'd be in love with the G Master, but the truth of the matter is that if you forced me to pick, you know, and money is an object, it always is, unfortunately, for the majority of society, unless you were in the 0.01%. I wouldn't even say the 1%. I could. This is the better combo. And I also say that because at the end of the day, in terms of the weight, this is a little over 13 ounces. I feel like this combination is only a little bit heavier than the G Master. And, you know, I still care about how much weight I'm carrying in my gear bag as well as on my shoulder, in my hand when I'm shooting. So I'd rather have the lighter, more versatile combo. And I really believe that exists with the pairing of the 20mm f1.8G and the Sony Zeiss 16-35 f4. So what's the moral of the story here? The moral is this is an amazing lens. If you're thinking about it, you don't need to think. It is that good. If you feel that you might need more range because this is the only lens you're buying or starting off with, then you already know what I think of these two. Do yourself a favor, get the older and still incredibly competent f4 16-35. You'll have a lot more gear because two lenses are clearly more than one, right? And you'll get sharper and better overall quality in the course of whatever you're trying to capture. Again, from both a still and video perspective. I also do really appreciate that this has optical steady shot where the G Master does not. For those of you that are wondering, and you're not subscribers, this was furnished to me by Sony for review purposes, as was the G Master. This, I already mentioned, I purchased on my own, as well as everything else you're seeing here. So the loaners will go back, but my opinion will not change. And that is that this 20mm wide-angle lens is absolutely the best option on the market right now, especially if price is relevant. And I think price is relevant for all of us, even if we have more money than we know what to do with, because at the end of the day, you know, making a right decision is a right decision, and making a poor one is a poor one. So the G Master is absolutely worth every dollar that it commands. Again, if you need, the G Series, the G Master 24mm, that's what I was alluding to. If you need the 24mm, then you get it. It's already one of the most heralded lenses in the E-mount full frame lineup. But Sony really pulled an ace here with bringing out a $900 wider version that's only a little bit slower, only a little less sharp. And I have to tell you, the form factor I absolutely love. And that is why it's going to be a long, hard decision for me personally if I want to pick this up. I didn't think I would. I thought I would just review it, let all of you know whether or not it's worth the money. But now I find myself, even amid a pandemic, a crisis where nobody has any money. I mean, come on. The entire economy, the world, the global economy is in the toilet. Unemployment is soaring. And who knows where the light is at the end of the tunnel. Well, even with all that going on, I am thinking about what I could sell to keep this as my pair in my bag, the only two lenses that I would carry. And granted, I have some other lenses I don't want to put down, but new is new, and performance, this does not lack. This would easily be my sharpest 20mm, my sharpest wide-angle option. And, you know, I could talk about comparing it to the 12-24 f4 that I reviewed in the past, but that's like an $1,800 lens these days, and that's just unrealistic in this conversation unless I'm going head-to-head just with the G Master alone. And in that case, I would pick the 12-24. Totally off topic, but food for thought for those of you that are wondering. So again, the 20mm f1.8 G series is a complete and total winner. You cannot go wrong. Just remember, if you need a little bit more range in either direction, unless money is no object, and even still, I'm going to recommend the f4 16-35 simply because of the weight, lack of stabilization, and again, the price tag that the G Master brings. That pretty much rounds things out. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. Please stay safe. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.